In Futurama, we actually learn a lot about Fry's family. There's entire episodes dedicated to his parents, his brother, the professor, his dog, his grandparents, or great-grandparents since he is his own grandfather. He even time traveled and met his ancestor from the American Revolution. But in this video, I'm not talking about any of that. In this video, I'm going to try and convince you that Fry is actually related to, or at a minimum connected to, the Griffins. And you guys are not going to like me because this is actually part 1 where I don't think I fully fleshed it out. But in part 2, the video coming out next week, I think I can pretty much nail it down. But this video has to go first in order to make that video make sense. Also, real quick guys, I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers, and if you guys could help me out with that, it would be greatly appreciated. So what sparked this theory? Absolutely nobody asked. I was like, well, Fry has orange hair, and Lois and her brother also have orange hair. And I wish I was joking, but here we are. But look, even though this is damning evidence, I actually do have some other evidence to back this up from both the series. First off, Fry is Irish, and the basic evidence I have for that, other than his hair, is actually not all that great, but we can infer this from a couple of more things. 1. He lives in New York, where according to a study done by the Washington Post, 12.9% of the population can trace their ancestry back to Ireland. He has a whole episode dedicated to him finding a 7-leaf clover in The Luck of the Friarish. When he died, they played bagpipes at his funeral in The Sting, and I believe that his funeral is the only one where they do this, but I could be wrong, so let me know if I am in the comments down below. But it really seems like we're supposed to at least come to the conclusion that he is of Irish descent. But now moving on to his connection to the Griffins, Lois and her brother probably have some Irish ancestry, but I didn't really have that much to go on since it's never really questioned in the show whether or not Carter is her biological father, which sort of sucked since this idea actually started off with Lois's mother having an affair with Fry's father. And as fun as that would have been, it just didn't hold up. I mean, we have pretty strong confirmation that Lois's mom definitely cheated on her dad, but I have no evidence that Fry's dad cheated on his mom. I don't want to rule this out as a possibility with Fry's dad being in the military, but I just don't really have enough to go on. But where there was no evidence really of that, there is actually a little bit more for Peter. See, like Fry, Peter is actually Irish. And this is guaranteed since we find out in Peter's 2 dads that Peter's biological father actually lives in Ireland. So we do have some connections with their ancestors coming from the same place, so there could be some ties. And more than likely, some of Peter's extended family might have landed in New York while immigrating to America and just stayed there. But actually, more than likely, he would be more closely related to Peter's father, Francis, since he was also of Irish descent and his ancestors definitely immigrated to America, possibly immigrating through New York City, making it actually more likely that Fry would be related to the Griffins than the McFinnegans. And this would definitely be possible since, according to a US News article, 16.4% of people in Rhode Island are actually of Irish descent. And just in case you guys didn't know, Peter's mom got pregnant with Peter on a trip to Ireland and then came back to America and met Francis, and Francis basically just raised Peter as his own son. And whether he did or did not know this fact is kind of out there, but he really never treated Peter any differently than any of Peter's other siblings, which Peter does actually have quite a bit of, so good on him for that. Oh, also, another fun fact, that means the fact that McFinnigan and Peter look similar mean nothing, since Peter's sister and Brosner also look like Peter, meaning most of those genes that made Peter look like Peter actually came from his mom. So another fun fact there. But more than likely, they're just distant cousins. But I do actually have one more parallel that I would like to bring up that can link Fry to the Griffins. So Fry is his own grandpa, and Peter is Stewie's descendant. Now, what do I mean by that? So for those of you that have lived under a rock in this world, a quick rundown here is Fry goes back in time and gets his grandpa killed, then becomes his own grandpa, and Stewie goes back in time, getting his ancestor Leonardo da Vinci killed, and replaces him, becoming his own ancestor and making Stewie his own descendant. Time travel sucks, guys. And now this is actually going to play a much bigger part in next week's video, so if you want to know exactly what makes Fry the chosen one, where I go more in depth on all of this, and I might genuinely confirm that Stewie is Fry's direct ancestor, but it's just way too much to explain in this video, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll know when that video goes up next week. But the general idea there is Stewie is actually Fry's ancestor. But for now, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that Fry is actually related to Lois through Babs cheating on him? And if you have evidence for that, please share it with me. Or do you guys think that he could be related to at least one of Peter's dads? Or do you just want to call out the fact that I made this video simply to justify the next one? And I haven't really proved anything just yet. And if that's the direction you want to go down in the comments, I really can't blame you, because the real sting is in next week's video. I just had to get this video up first in order to kind of make that video make a little bit more sense. So please let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. While you're down there, please remember to hit that like, comment, subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video. So I think we can all agree that Fry at times can be a weird character. One of the strangest things about him, though, is that he has been considered the chosen one to save the universe on 2 separate occasions. He was the only one who could stop the brains, and he was the only one who could stop the Dark One. Oddly enough, both of these have to do with Fry's freaky brain, but that is kind of another video. Now, although we see what happens and we get the full stories for the Dark One, what we never find out is how Nibbler and the Niblodians figured out to look for Fry in the first place. So to keep my promise from last week's video, in this video I will not only connect Fry directly to the Griffins, but also I'm going to explain how Nibbler knew to look for Fry in the first place and why Fry is the chosen one. But hey, real quick guys, I'm trying to reach 2,000 subscribers, and if you guys could help me out with that, it would be greatly appreciated. So to pick up with what I teased with last week, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go watch last week's video. Let's quickly go over one of the things Fry is most famous for, becoming his own grandpa. To give you a rundown, basically in Roswell That Ends Well, Fry puts Jivy Pop in the microwave during a supernova explosion, and this causes the Planet Express crew to be sent back in time, becoming the alien ship that crash lands in Roswell, New Mexico. As it just so happens, his grandfather, Enos, was stationed there, and in a vain and idiotic attempts to make sure he does not die, he would ultimately end up killing him by putting him in a house during a test of a nuclear bomb. After this, he would go to his grandmother's house, and when she starts to come on to him, he actually thinks that Enos wasn't his grandfather because he was still existing. So Fry does the nasty and the pasty and bangs his grandma, simultaneously knocking her up and causing a weird time dilation thing to happen where time for everyone but the crew speeds up to where his grandmother is an old woman, and I guess taking all the Fry's memories of his grandfather and swapping them out for himself. You know, for all the things Futurama explains, this is literally never addressed, so it's kind of frustrating. Now, the side effects of this are actually interesting, because by Fry becoming his own grandfather, he actually lacks the delta brainwave, and this causes 2 things to happen. One, it lowers his intelligence significantly. Not that he doesn't have the potential to become intelligent, just usually making him exceptionally stupider than the average person. Now, the second thing it does is it makes him the only person capable of stopping the brains. Literally sentient brains that have been fighting the Niblodians since the beginning of the universe, in an attempt to gain all knowledge in the universe, since they target this brainwave to make intelligent beings stop sinking so their thoughts don't actually hurt them. Now, let me walk you through an event that happened to Stewie in The Big Bang Theory, and let me know in the comments if you notice some similarities. So in the episode, Stewie and Brian get stuck outside of time, and Stewie has to blow up the return pad to get them home. This explosion actually turns out to be the catalyst for the Big Bang, thus Stewie creates the universe, also making everything that happens before that a fixed series of events that would lead to Stewie being born and getting stuck outside of time, since it always has to happen like that for the universe to be created. But Bertram, Stewie's arch nemesis and half-brother, finds out Stewie has a time machine and tries to use it to kill Stewie by eliminating his ancestor. But he has to go back far enough to where Stewie is killed, or at a minimum make him not a genius, but Bertram would be unaffected. This leads him all the way back to the Renaissance times to kill none other than his ancestor, Leonardo da Vinci. So Brian and Stewie go back in time to stop him, and throughout the events of the episode, both da Vinci and Bertram are killed. But since Stewie and the universe don't disappear, he figures out that he has to be the one to stay in the past and pass on his genes. So he does just that when Da Vinci's girlfriend comes along, becoming his own ancestor. Also, side note and fun fact, Da Vinci actually had no children and thus doesn't have any direct descendants in the real world. As a matter of fact, he might actually have been gay and was arrested for sodomy before the charges were dismissed. The more you know. Anyway, So all of that sounds pretty familiar, right? But how will this connect Fry to the Griffins and make him the chosen one to defeat the Brains? Well, it's actually the lack of the Delta brainwave. See, once Stewie becomes his own ancestor, the lack of the Delta brainwave would have become a genetic trait, thus an entire family line of people that were all, in a sense, idiots, or at least did idiotic things. To give an example, I can use Peter and his ancestors, since it would have been through Peter's family that the lack of the brainwave would have come from. So for those of you who don't know, Peter is actually not only dumb, but he is actually legally retarded, and almost all of his ancestors pretty much act the same way he does. They all have the same mannerisms and get into shenanigans pretty much exactly like Peter does. But some of the ones we see were from before the Renaissance, some of you might say. And to that I say, good point, but those would have just been stories and he was told by his hard-ass father, who actually, like I touched on in last week's video, wasn't his biological father, and it is sort of unclear whether or not he knew this or not, but if he did, he still stepped up, so good on him. Or if he was told all of this by his biological dad, who was a drunk idiot. So who knows how exactly they could all have been. I mean, a lot of it's probably really overly exaggerated. But then we can look at the men in Fry's family. They seem to have similar problems. His grandfather seemed uneducated. All his dad had going for him was he was in the military. And though a war veteran and a good soldier, take it from my own experience, in the military sometimes it's the ones who don't do a lot of thinking that are able to cope and do well in the service, and those are the ones who will usually end up making a career. His brother was about as intelligent as he was, and even his traitorous ancestor, David Farnsworth, was realistically pretty dumb and easily manipulated to the wrong side of the cause. Now, I will admit, this is still kind of a stretch, but I do have more, so don't worry. Because this also explains how Nibbler and the Nickelodeons knew what to look for in Fry to beat the Brains ahead of time. They were already following Da Vinci's family tree. See, the Nickelodeons predate the Big Bang by 17 years, and since they witnessed the birth of the universe, they would have noticed how strange this particular formation was, studying just how it happened while battling the Brains. They would have found out about how Stewie created it, though they might not at the time have understood it was due to Stewie time traveling. That is, until the timeline caught up to the Victorian era, and they would have been drawn to Earth, since the lack of the Delta brainwave in the population might have kept the Brains at bay from returning to Earth to destroy it, because canonically the Brains actually are the cause of the dinosaurs going extinct in this universe. That is until the future, when most of the people with that trait had died off or diluted it enough through the generations to where the entire planet regained the Delta brainwave, something we have already seen is possible with Fry's nephew, Philip, who literally was so successful he was the first man on Mars. So with the Nickelodeons taking an interest in Earth, they would have been looking into the family tree of the people who lacked this brainwave, going all the way back to Da Vinci and then following Da Vinci's family tree, keeping tabs on them while trying to figure out what caused this anomaly. So they were probably keeping tabs on Enos, being in the most current generation at the time who lacked the brainwave, and then seeing the events of Roswell in real time, with Fry becoming his own grandfather, basically giving him, his dad, and his brother more potent genetics and a greater resistance to the Brains. Then, the Nickelodeons, possibly not knowing he was time traveling, or maybe they did, since they can literally project their minds into the past, wait and bide their time until Fry is born, and since he caused the second anomaly, he was their prime candidate to send to the future to stop the Brains when they did come back, basically turning him into a weapon against the Brains they could pull out at any time, and then when the time was right, they simply make the events that happened to send Fry to the future. But basically, just to kind of sum up this whole idea, the Nickelodeons witness Stewie create the universe and start studying its creation. Eventually, the Brains come into existence, and the Nickelodeons start battling the Brains and looking for a way to defeat them. Around the Renaissance times, they register the Brains are staying away from Earth. This is the time when Stewie becomes his own ancestor, and the lack of the Delta brainwave becomes a genetic trait in some of the population. The Nickelodeons start to study this and keep tabs on all of Stewie's descendants, lacking the brainwave. Stewie's descendants eventually immigrate to Ireland and then ultimately to the Americas, some of them settling in New York and Rhode Island. Enos goes into the military and gets stationed as Roswell. Fry goes back in time, kills Enos, and becomes his own grandfather. The Nickelodeons see this, realize that Fry is the best candidate to send to the future to defeat the Brains, and then Fry is born, grows up, and Nibbler and Fry himself send Fry into the future. and the rest of it as pretty much history. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all of these theories. Are they possible and make sense, or have I just looked way too far into it? Do you think this would actually explain why the brains didn't come back for so long, since it sort of seems like they should have came back way sooner than they did? But while you guys are down there, please remember for me to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another video from me, and I will see you guys in the next video.